I definitely feel like a product of 10,000 years of agricultural evolution. All my indris are working at its fullest, But the biggest achievement is that I still have all my 10 toes and all my 10 fingers intact. Unfortunately, I don't want to say it. We try and attempt it, but out of the 15, 16, 8,000 meter mountains which I've climbed till now, we've hardly come back. I think only in 2 or 3 expeditions the same number of people who we left with. Like we were one of those typical one of those army families where अगर अगले दिन हम लोगों ने कहीं जाना है तो एक रात पहले हमारे सारे बैग्स पैक होके लॉबी में रख दिए जाते थे घर की उसमें मतलब कई बार तो गाड़ी में भी पैक करके रख दिया था. We were so meticulous in our planning.
So there's a family, we are a family for next 2 months. Family can be people's weakness.
Right.
But there's no space for weakness there.
Emotional baggage does sometimes hinder you from taking decisions clearly, but I think family gives you strength. And I still remember calling my mom back at home from the little bit juice which I had left in my satellite phone, and I told her that, Mom, you know what, I don't think I can come back home this time.
So how do you look at life and death now?
Being a mountaineer, I think the day it's not my day, I can fall off from the top of a mountain and I will not die. And the funny thing is that Pakistani climbers can very nicely go and climb Kangchenjunga from the Nepalese side. Yes. But unfortunately, no Indian can go and climb K2.
Very warm welcome, viewers, to our Republic podcast. It's yet another episode, and this episode, in fact, is not just insightful, but it is very exciting. It is something that you will not forget. Those life experiences are something that not everybody actually gets to feel. And today we have a very special guest for that. Remember, there are moments when we all feel on top of the world, but here is a man who has been literally on top of the world. I have with me Arjun Vajpai, who is the champion of Indian mountaineering. You can say he is right now aiming for the Grand Slam of mountaineering. He was once the youngest Indian to scale the Mount Everest, and he is right now, at the moment, at present as we speak, he is the youngest to scale 7 peaks that are 8,000 plus meters. So thank you so much for joining us here at Republic Podcast, Arjun. It's a proud moment whenever we see you, unfurling the tricolor on those peaks, and you've had some really important, insights to share, of course, and experiences. And you are right now on another target. We will talk about that. That is Project 8K. But right now, I just want to understand from you that since you are in just a few days from now going for another expedition and another record to script yet another historic summit, how is the Josh right now?
The Josh is certainly very high, but in this high Josh, obviously there's a lot of meticulous planning which is underway right now. Climbing above 8,000 meters, attempting peaks. This is going to be my 16th 8,000 meter expedition over the last 14 years. So definitely it's been a long journey since being a 16-year-old and reaching the top of the world, and then I call that moment dreams turning into a reality. But since then I've never had to look back, and I've kept on climbing in the pursuit of making the first Indian reach all the 14 8,000 meter mountains. I started Project 8K, 7 down, 7 more to go, 2 more left for the 8th and 9th one, which I'll be heading soon. So the head is all over the place, but yet I'm really looking forward to heading to the mountains, away from all of this meticulous planning and all the logistic managements and all the permissions which need to be put into place. But I'm really looking forward to the climbing bit. I can free my mind. I feel at one and at peace once I'm up there in the mountains. So really looking forward to this 2024 spring climbing season and attempting 2 more 8,000 meter plus peaks in this coming season.
And tell us about the next 2 peaks. One is in Tibet, I believe, and the other one is in Nepal. And you're aiming for 2 peaks in one expedition,
yes,
one go you're going. So how you will go about it?
It's being called the double knockdown. We are trying to attempt 2 8,000 meter mountains in one season. The last time I had tried to climb 2 8,000 meter mountains was back in 2012. So it's almost been 12 years since the time I have attempted 2 in a season, so it's a big undertaking for me. The first one is going to be in the Tibetan plateau region. It's called Shishapangma. It's the 14th highest one out of all the 14. That we'll be attempting in somewhere in the month of April. Somewhere during the end of April, we'll be summiting this mountain, and then we'll be coming back towards Nepal again via road, and then we'll be attempting Dhaulagiri, which happens to be the world's 7th highest mountain. And hopefully, I am able to be successful. The plan is to be successful and create another history for India. I'll become the first Indian climber to ever climb 9 8,000 meter peaks out of the 14. So unfortunately, there are less than 40 climbers in the world who ever climbed the Grand Slam of mountaineering, and there's no Indian in that list. So Project 8K was basically started to put the first Indian in that list of 14 8,000 meter climbers. And I think with all your blessings and all your support, I'm more than certain I'll be able to achieve my targets and come back home with yet another world record in my kitty for India.
लेकिन देखिए आपने जो कि बात करी Shishang Pangma, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong,
yes.
and the other one is Dhaulagiri. Especially Shishang Pangma, I think last year there were reports of avalanches, quite deadly avalanches.
Correct.
There were many casualties also, and you know it has a history of a lot of such horrific experiences for mountaineers.
Absolutely. Shishang Pangma, though it is the 14th highest one, the least highest out of all the 14, but yet it has posed quite a lot of challenges in the last few years due to climate change, global warming. That just reminds me, even I was climbing a peak last year, 2023 swing season, called Annapurna, happens to be one of the most dangerous peaks on planet Earth yet again, is the 9th highest one out of the 14, and I also lost a team member last year. So 8,000 meter mountains, when you look at them, margin of error is very low. Oxygen levels almost 1/3 of what you're breathing out here. Your brain cells are dying, your stomach muscles are contracting. It gets difficult to breathe. There are chances that you might have to do amputation of your team members. If you come back with all your toes and all your 10 fingers, it's a big achievement in itself. So I often tell this to a lot of people that my biggest achievement is not that I've been able to climb the 7 peaks which I have been able to summit out of all these expeditions which I've done, but the biggest achievement is that I still have all my 10 toes and all my 10 fingers intact. And unfortunately, in 8,000 meter mountains, we do most of the times lose some team members, and that is what is going to happen. Unfortunately, I don't want to say it. We try and attempt it, but out of the 15, 16, 8,000 meter mountains which I've climbed till now, we've hardly come back. I think only in 2 or 3 expeditions, the same number of people who we left with. So it's almost like Russian roulette. You know, you're eating, breaking bread. We just meet our team members in Kathmandu, and then that's your family for the next 2 months. You climb with these 8, 9, 10, 12 climbers for the next 60 days, and you don't know if you're going to come out with the same number of people who you left with on the other side of the mountain, right? So uncertainties are a lot there, and that's why mountaineering, you really cannot compare it like other sports, you know. Other sports, you are actually competing with basically, you know, human beings. But here, your opponent is actually Mother Nature. So you can hardly compete with it.
So you're competing with nature. But Arjun, you've been, you know, starting since like when you actually garnered the limelight, that was at the age of 16. What drove a young 16-year-old to, you know, people are, you know, they like to party maybe or do some adventure sports, theek hai, chale gaye chuttiyon pe, but, you know, risking your life. I mean, how did it come to your mind?
I think I was always very passionate towards the outdoors. I think you can very clearly relate to it. I was never sitting in the classroom also when I was in school.
Let me tell you, he's my classmate. And in high school, when everybody has the, you know, pressure of board examinations, and you know, you leave all your passion because, you know, your parents are telling you to just focus on academic for the next 2 years and leave everything apart. This man was actually, you know, always on the ground. When the teacher would ask, you know, I remember that where is Arjun? We turn back and there's only Arjun's bag
in the classroom.
And Arjun's never there. So,
you know, that was basically my story, right? Yes. I think it is so evident that I was always outside the classroom, name the sport and I would play it. I always was passionate towards the outdoors, and I was so lucky to have gotten this opportunity while I was in my 11th class itself to go about climbing the world's highest mountain. But I think so the love was always there. I consider myself very grateful to have gotten these opportunities to be able to, you know, make my passion into my profession and kind of sort of actually get to follow and live my dreams. I think there are very few of us who get it, so I try to do justice to it. Now that I've gotten the opportunity, I feel there's nobody better than me who can actually go about, you know, achieving this dream for India and climbing all the 8,000 meter mountains. So the zeal is there. I want to see India on the top. Mountaineering was a sport in which after the 1960s there wasn't a lot of climbing which the Indians did on 8,000 meter mountains. No significant climbs were done. And I think when India can compete in the space race, right? When India can compete in the tech race, right? And come out
India
on top,
on the moon,
then why not India can be in the mountain race also and finish and put the first Indian amongst the 8,000 meter mountain climbers. And it's something which I'm very passionate towards. And I think I find my power from there.
So Arjun, you talked about, you know, your, you know, some power, and you talk about inspiration, passion, but, you know, I'll still come back to it that, you know, as a young, you know, you have that young blood, yes, you're excited, But you were well versed with the risks, of course. Your family was also well versed with the risks, and you are, a young life. You could do so much more, but you chose. Okay, Mount Everest was a great achievement, but after that, sometimes people might think, okay, I've done it and I don't need anything else. क्या उसके बाद शेर के मुंह में खून लग जाने वाली बात होगी?
हाँ, नहीं, एक तरीके से हो गया था. Mountaineering was definitely, it struck me like no other addiction. It's really like an addiction, I feel. When you see nature in its most virgin state in front of you, nature at times does not even know how to discriminate between a big mistake or a small mistake, or in between a small child or a big one, or a man or a woman. It does not discriminate. It's a great equalizer. So, climbing mountains, I always say, doesn't only change your perspective physically, but also philosophically. You are able to, with the change in vantage point, you're able to look at situations, look at reality from a far off perspective, and thus bring a huge change in, drastic shift in your reality as well. Back when I was 16, I was like a fool in my own paradise. When you don't know, right, what you're getting into at times, it's actually like a blessing. So, being lost and in your own world is actually a blessing sometimes. And for example, Everest, right? I knew mountaineering is difficult. I knew it was going to be hard. But I had never seen the hardships of mountaineering. I had never seen the what all things could go wrong. And as a 16-year-old, I had very little to fear. So I think that actually worked out much more in my favor. And parents were very apprehensive, but I think I call my mom a tiger mom because she has nerves of steel, and my father is a paratrooper. He was from the 1st Para SF, and he's an inspiration to us all in our family in its own way itself, because the kind of mindset which it requires to be a mountaineer, the kind of never give up spirit, the kind of jugadu mindset which it requires in extreme phase of survival, when there are lack of resources, when there is extreme conditions, you are in a dynamic environment, temperatures are going down to -60, -70 degrees Celsius. In the daytime, it can go up to +55, +50 degrees Celsius. Winds can pick up to 120, 130 kilometers per hour. So things can get very, very crazy. And that point, how to keep yourself calm, how to be present, how to react, right? How to not actually go about reacting but responding to a situation, was the kind of mindset which my parents have given me. So if you think I'm crazy, you are yet to meet my parents, because they are even more crazier. Like we were one of those typical one of those army families where अगर अगले दिन हम लोगों ने कहीं जाना है तो एक रात पहले हमारे सारे बैग्स पैक होके लॉबी में रख दिए जाते थे घर की, उसमें मतलब कई बार तो गाड़ी में भी पैक करके रख दिया था. We were so meticulous in our planning. If we had to go anywhere, we would always reach 15 minutes in advance. So I think it was somewhere or the else trained within us, the lifestyle of being an army officer's son. And that is what resulted in, when you make a artist woman marry a army officer, this is what you get, a mountaineer, So I'm nowhere to be blamed for this kind of a mindset.
Nobody's blaming you. We are proud of you.
It's my parents.
Yes. No, but the thing is that nothing stops you. You were just mentioning about Annapurna, what happened last year. There was a rescue. Also, there were Indians who were missing, and you also lost one of your teammates. An Irishman who's Noel.
Hannah, correct.
Yes, and he passed away. And you began with saying, there's a family, we are a family for next 2 months. Family can be people's weakness.
Right.
But there's no space for weakness there. How do you really see death?
Family is actually not weakness. Firstly, I don't look at family as weakness. I know in what context you're saying it. Emotional baggage does sometimes hinder you from taking decisions clearly. But I think family gives you strength. Strength to rise every day and to see the sunrise every day. And if you're lucky enough to see the sunrise every day, you're far more luckier than the ones who did not wake up today. And so was the story of Noel Hannah. He was a mentor of mine, inspiration of all of us in the mountaineering community from South Africa. He was living in South Africa, but he was a typical Irish lad, about 52 years old, but we lost him while on our way back from the summit. We successfully summited the mountain, but there were 2 more Indians who were lost. There was an Indian girl climber who was somewhere between the last camp and the summit. There was an Indian climber called Anurag who was stuck. He would fall into a crevasse and he was being rescued. So it was a complete, in all honesty, you can call it a shit show on the mountain. Excuse my language, but that is what it was. and you have to take hard decisions, and you have to take difficult calls at times, and nothing can justify your actions probably when you're sitting from here and taking those calls up there. But trust me when I say this, when death is looking straight dead into your eyes, right, you are left with very little options, and the human spirit from itself, your survival instinct does push you and does take decisions and makes you familiar with versions of your own self, which you never thought you were, or which you never thought you could have taken, right? So it's such a that's what I'm telling you. It's such a wholesome experience climbing a mountain. It's not just about the physical fitness.
You, or you are different. Do you have a different mindset than?
I take these 8,000 meter mountains as it's like a lab for me. I always say this thing that the mountains outside help me climb the mountains within. It helps me break those barriers, break those silos, break those walls, which I've built up from within myself, within my own head. And to see a version of Arjun which I've never seen, to be able to be a better version of what I was yesterday, to try and be a little bit better than that at least today. So that's the kind of mindset which you require, constantly self-actualizing, constantly getting a grip of what kind of resources do you have, constantly trying to push your limits, constantly trying to strike a balance, between your emotion and your health. So obviously it gets very, very difficult, and there are difficult calls to be taken. But I think climbing mountains is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's not all about scary stuff, right? The perspectives, the views which we get to see are so beautiful. Once you're 8,000 meters up above the sky, right? 8,000 meters, almost 8 kilometers from where we are sitting right now. If you go straight up, people look at Burj Khalifa and they go like, wow, what is this, right? But if you just look at any 8,000 meter peak, it's like almost 8 times of Burj Khalifa. And looking at such a tall feature, right?
Yeah. You're competing with nature.
And then you look at that, and it just changes your perspective about everything. And then you reach the top and you look at everything which you're looking from down. And you can actually see the earth bending in front of your eyes, right? When you're at 8,000 meters. So for the first time in your life, you can see the earth's curvature in front of you, like you're no less than an astronaut. And then it's such a beautiful feeling, I feel.
But you say it with, you laugh it off. I know that you just make it look very simple. But we've learned about it, we've read and we've covered how you've had so many near-death experiences. There've been times when you've been literally hanging on from some, I don't know how many thousand feet, and looking, you don't even know where you're going to fall. There have been such situations.
Right.
What really goes into your mind when you face such situations? There's been Mount Lhotse, I think, where you've had such experience. Makalu, Manaslu, and there are many others where just
I definitely feel like a product of 10,000 years of agricultural evolution. All my indris are working at its fullest, So I sometimes out here, I think there's a wiring locha in my head. I don't know if my mother dropped me when I was a young child or something got, loose up here in my head. But in the most relaxed of the relaxed situations, Rakshita, I feel very anxious. And then in the most intense and dynamic situations, most of my times, which my profession takes me into, there's like this sense of calm, which flows from behind my head. There's something which gets released, and I'm like, everything, I feel more in control on the mountain than anywhere else. So when and trust me, like as you were mentioning, I've done it all. Like I've literally been hanging from a thread, from a rope on a mountain while there was a huge crevasse under me, and I'd lost my track on Everest. I've fallen into a crevasse. I have been paralyzed from the complete left side of my body on a mountain called Cho Oyu in Tibet back in 2012 when I was only 19. I've seen my team members die. We've cut my team members' fingers and toes because they were suffering from frostbite at base camp itself. So we've literally seen it all. But trust me, like I think this was the life which I had dreamed for in a very psycho way. I'm saying this. It's obviously I know that I can also sometimes I might not come back from the mountains, but I feel the mountains have chosen me. I always feel in more control over there. There are difficult calls to be taken, but you're so present with and overwhelmed with what is going on all around you that you hardly have time to overthink. In like this, when you're sitting out here, probably the viewers when they are sitting in your relaxed homes,
so you're
right?
In that survival mode.
You're definitely in survival mode, and nothing else goes on your mind. You're just problem solving. In an expedition, there are so many.
Amputing like that is not something.
And it's required. It's the.
In what situations have you?
After a summit push, like once on Makalu, we had Iniesta, a climber from Spain, and he got stuck higher up on the mountain after a summit push and was not able to come back in time. Jet winds took him down, and then slowly he came down, climbing down. It was too high, too up for a very long time. And till the time he reached the base camp, he had lost all his 10 fingers to frostbite. So they were all cold and it was hurting. So instead, the helicopter couldn't come from Kathmandu to base camp because there were clouds down in the valley and it could not fly through. It attempted twice but had to go back. Now the infection was starting to spread. It was hurting him now that he had receded altitude. And we had to take the call that do we let him suffer like this or do we relieve him? So first aid has to be administered. There are sometimes we have to do stitching. Femur is coming out if a person falls. There are avalanches which we are struck by on the mountain. If it's a snow powder avalanche, you are still lucky. You can only get buried by the snow. But if it's rubble, rock, ice, snow coming together, then it works like a blender. And if you get trapped into it, we've had climbers whose dead bodies we literally had to collect various parts of their bodies. So it is definitely as wild as a sport can actually get. That's why I hate calling it a sport. It's a lifestyle. Exploring, mountaineering, pushing your limits is definitely a lifestyle where we get better insight into how much can a body withstand, how far can we push our limits, how much can we survive without water, how much can we survive without food, how much can we, process our brain. Once you go above 8,000 meters, you also have a lack in, drop in your IQ levels.
Okay.
So if I tell you over here, let's say what is 2 plus 2 plus 2 minus 2, you're like, okay, 3 2s plus, that is 6, minus 2, one time, which is like 4. But over there, you'll be like confused, you'll be counting on your fingers and you'll be completely, as nowadays generation calls it, dilulu. So you get you get very dilulu over there most of the time above 8,000 meters. So making very simple decisions. You'll have your shoelace will be open, but you'll be thinking for the next 5 minutes. Okay, I want to tie it, but should I tie it? You'll be gasping for breath as you just go about. So simple tasks get very difficult. But I don't know.
Because of the oxygen?
Because of the lack of oxygen. So it's a very interesting world, the 8,000 meter mountain. It's very difficult. It's not for the faint-hearted ones, definitely. But for crazy people like me, I think it's the best kind of life to ever follow.
And you take, there are people with you. And like I was reading about Shashank Pangman, there were some of the mountaineers, sharing about how there has been competition between mountaineers. And it has affected it very badly. The expedition has been almost spoiled because of that.
Right.
How do you deal with your, teammates, if I could call them? And is there a competition? But you also have to help each other.
Like any other sport, now mountaineering also, earlier on, let's say, talking 10 years, 15 years ago, there were only less than 60, 70 climbers who would come back across the world every year and attempt these 8,000 meter mountains. It was never attempted by a lot of youngsters. And I also started this trend about a lot of youngsters now started attempting 8,000 meter peaks from India. Before that, nobody had ever thought about climbing. It was always considered the old man sport. The more seasoned people, the more experienced one would support it. Because naturally climbing an 8,000 meter mountain requires almost 35-40 lakh rupees spare money. Plus, you require 2 months of time. So any young individual who has a full-time job who can afford that kind of money cannot get the time in their lives. And then obviously there's a lot of decision making which goes on, and others' lives are at stake. So it's a high risk environment, right? And it's only been done historically by very well-seasoned mountaineers. Now coming back to the whole thing about commercialization of this sport is definitely happening. It's become really, really, really popular. Now there are at least, I think, 200, 300 Indians every year who are just attempting Everest itself. So like any other sport, when it gets commercialized, there is a sense of competition which will happen. But time and again, nature has its own ways of humbling us human beings down and showing us our place. We are like literally, even if you see on Everest, people say commercialization. Yes, nature is being affected. There's no two denying about it. And Nepal has been very proactive in actively managing their tourism waste and recycling and how they're curating adventure and tourism. And we can take a lot of inspiration from Nepal in those sense of how to develop our outdoors, how to develop our, while keeping most of our resources, natural resources intact, how can we exploit our adventure tourism, which has a great scope at a global level today. So there's a lot to be learned, but there is a sense of competition which is there. But nature has its own way, as I told you, of humbling everybody. We don't have to deal.
Survival mode. If somebody is almost dying,
everybody is for everybody. Each mountaineer it's not. That's what I'm telling you. Though we have to come together and climb as a part of a team, but everybody is free to do and climb in their own way possible, in their own style possible. Because again, we have to come back to the basic foundation of mountaineering. So it does affect a lot of people, and I think we must not get more very competitive side of mountaineering should not come out. It should be for finding the mountains within and exploring and pushing the limits of the human endeavors, you know, not in the more philosophical sense, rather the competitive sense.
But like there have been experiences where you've also in the past shared about, like you've been pronounced dead, clinically dead.
Yes.
There have been times when you've been paralyzed. Tell us, share those anecdotes with us where,
Right.
you know, what was going through in your mind and what was happening around you, and you know.
I think, yes, what you're referring to is 2012. I was attempting a double header, double knockdown back then again. And it was trying to climb Cho Oyu, which is the 6th highest mountain, and Shishapangma, which is the 7th highest one. So on my first mountain itself, on Cho Oyu, I was in a hurry, and on Camp 2, I found myself being paralyzed. We were stuck in a bad storm for 2 nights, 3 days. And after the first 2-3 days, we ran out of all our supplies, all our oxygen, and we were stuck with heavy snowfall happening. We were barely able to sleep because one of us had to always stay up to clean the tent. And after 3 nights of heavy snow shower, when I woke up the 3rd day, my body had given way. There were 11 clots which had formed in my head. So the left side of my body had completely paralyzed. It was a condition called cerebral thrombosis, which the doctors later on identified. But and I had to take the call many times on an 8,000 meter mountain. We have to take the difficult call where you have to save as many lives as possible and let go of the ones who are almost dead. So in order to save the ones who are at least can be saved the most. So but only this time I was the one who was being left behind. Back in 2012. I was only 19 years old when I had attempted, 18 years old when I had attempted this double header. And I still remember calling my mom back at home from the little bit juice which I had left in my satellite phone, and I told her that, Mom, you know what, I don't think I can come back home this time. And my mom fainted on the other side of the phone, and you know, there was a whole drama which started. My father, still remember my father coming back to me and telling me that, you know what, at least try and move, and telling me, I'm laughing on the phone and telling my father, I don't think कि ये हो पाएगा अभी ना, मतलब, but he's like, नहीं, कोशिश करो. For the first time in my para-SF father's life, I heard him getting emotional. He's like, nahi, koshish karo. You can move. If you can move, then you can try and come down. But we were at a very technical phase where 2 more Sherpas were there with me, young people who had to save themselves also first. But they promised me that they'll come back and save my life. At least try to rescue me if the weather clears tomorrow. If it did not, then obviously it was going to be a recovery operation of just the dead body. So फिर धीरे धीरे करके मौसम अगले दिन साफ हुआ, बट मैंने भी हार नहीं मानी. As soon as they left, I saw a dead body which was outside already of a previous climber. So I got motivated and I told myself that no, I won't die just like this,
Everybody
giving
motivated
up.
you instead of scaring you.
So you see that's how in real life sometimes things move you. And it just hit me, and I tore the tent down, and it was snowing, and then I crawled alone till the ice cliff which I had to cross, the technical section due to which the Sherpas could not take me down. And I was like, if I'm going to die today, let this be. I can't just give up like this. So I slid down from the ice slope which was there, and I came down 100 meters down, and that's the day I literally died. So when the Sherpas found me over there, they found me with no brain activity, no heart activity. They packed me up in a sleeping bag on a stretcher and wrapped me and started getting me down like a dead body. But I think what had actually happened was I had gone into hibernation mode. I had just literally frozen. So I often say that I'm like a cockroach, you know, like I always survive out of situations. Always. And it's like a whole different tale, literally. If I get into details, it's a 3-4 hour long journey, but I won't bore you with the details. But suddenly then they were lowering me down from one of these rocky slopes. They brought me significantly down like a dead body. All the 4 Sherpas, I still owe my life to them. Thank you so much for helping me. But at that moment, they got so scared, they thought it was a ghost, because I came back to life as soon as they lowered me down in altitude. I think my body got defrosted and then suddenly I started to move, and then the outdoor equipment, you know, when it rubs against all waterproof gear, so it rubs against each other's fabric, so there was a lot of sound from her, rustle from inside the mountain, and immediately they felt like there was some kind of a ghost in there, and they left the ropes off, and I went crashing down another 150 meters, hit my head on the rock, and I shouted ah, and then they realized that okay, I have come back to life in my same dead body. So literally there was this moment when I have actually been dead as well. And then I promised myself that I'll never go back to this mountain. Obviously coming back then, I was admitted in the hospital for 6 months at AIIMS, Delhi, and every day it was a battle convincing the doctors that, you know, don't cut this finger or don't cut that finger, because I could feel that it was alive from in there, but I could not move anything. So they were suggesting amputations and things like this, but I could still feel that it was alive. And one fine day, my paralysis started to fade away, and I was able to move my left hand and my left leg after the doctors had given up. And then long road of recovery, and then I trained hard. And the next year, I set my eyes on Makalu, and then Makalu is a long story. But finally, back in 2016, then I was able to summit Cho Oyu, and prove it at least just to myself that if I can dream about doing something, I can actually go about achieving it.
So you actually mentioned in the beginning that these peaks you were mentioning about are mostly for experienced mountaineers.
Correct.
So forth. But you also mentioned a while back about when you are 16, 17, you don't know what you're getting into. So you actually sail through it quite easily. You don't even get to know what you're doing. How does it change you now? Because now you're 30, 31. Has it made you less or you're more cautious, or
see,
your
experience,
psyche
correct. I think if you talk about the mental aspect of it, getting into a mountaineer's brain, I always say this thing, that experience is like a double-edged sword. It does give you a pedestal to stand upon and look at the world from a different perspective. But it does also hinder your risk-taking capabilities at the same point of time. So it's up to you. How do you want to use it? It's a knife. You can either, use it to chisel out a beautiful, beautiful painting from wood, or either you can poke it into somebody's eye and hurt him. So experience is a double-edged sword. And somewhere or the other, I do feel that the 16-year-old Arjun definitely had an edge over the experienced 30-year-old Arjun today. But I definitely feel that there's a lot with the 16-year-old Arjun can learn from the 30-year-old Arjun. If there was a note which I could write to him, the 16-year-old, there would definitely be a long note of the mistakes and the not do's more than the do's. Because I was a very curious person generally by nature, and I have done my fair share bit of mistakes. I have taken enough risk, and I have faced the consequences, faced the music when it did play in front of me. All that I dreamt of has been manifested, but then sometimes controlling our mind is the real key. So I think experience is a double-edged sword. Use it very wisely.
So how do you look at life and death now?
Being a mountaineer, I think the day it's not my day, I can fall off from the top of a mountain and I will not die. But the day it is my day, even God can't help and save me. Because there have been times on the mountains, Rakshita, when the most deserving of the deserving people have died, and without taking any risk. And the one who you thought would not survive, the most amateur of the amateur one, sometimes survives. The ones who you never thought would be able to survive actually are the ones who come out surviving. So nature is so vast. We try and find often just, even the human mind is built such that we try and find patterns in nothingness often. So you can always try and find meanings behind things, but trust me, we don't have a clue of what is going on and the day we are going to die. So the best thing is not care about something which we had no control over. I think overthinking is a waste of time. The day it's your day, nobody can stop you from, dying. Nobody can help you from dying. And the day it's not your day, even if you don't have water, lack of resources, without food, without water, I've seen people survive for the longest time. And the person who we thought would be the most comfortable and would be, oh no, he had the most chance of surviving, has been found dead. So, you never know what is going to happen the next morning. So if you're lucky enough to be seeing the sunrise every day, make the most of it. Or keep on dreaming big, keep on daring to chase it, take as many risks as possible. Because climbing mountains has made this thing very clear for me. That we dream too small actually. We do the mistake of often highly underestimating our own selves. The boundaries of our imaginations are also so limited. Sometimes, even dream so small. So literally, I always say this to all youngsters, all young Indians out there, that dream big and dare to chase it. Because if you can think about doing something, if it's coming in your head, you're actually designed and built to do it. It does not matter where you come from or what you have. See, I being from Noida, my father being from Uttar Pradesh, my mother being from Maharashtra, we have nobody from the Pahadi community. Nobody had ever thought that a young boy from Noida would end up becoming the most experienced mountaineering prodigy India has ever seen on 8,000-meter mountains. So it does not matter truly where it comes from. If I could do it, if a person like me could do it, anybody can go about doing it.
There's a lot of focus in your fitness, like to all those who are listening and youngsters who actually want to pursue this. There's a lot of icons to look up to. You are one. You have cricketers, you have tennis players, and everyone. But for mountaineering,
correct,
you are one person. I think the best person to actually tell those who are actually listening to us and want to go this path. What would you like to say? How to go about things in your life? Because you are a young guy and you've been doing this for more than a decade now.
Correct.
And how to balance your other things in life, your personal and such risk-taking activities. I mean,
I think fitness has been always a very integral part of my life. I'm very proud to say that I'm also a Fit India ambassador, and we are actively promoting outdoors. I run a venture called Climb Up Adventures, where we are running in-school adventure programs across all schools in India. All the major schools in India now are running our adventure programs. So young Indians are actually getting to do adventure within their school premises, and they're actually going out for their summer camps with us. And the school curriculums are giving a big enhancement to it. Then I actively at a personal level also keep fitness at my utmost level. It's a very integral part of my everyday lifestyle because I'm an early riser. I don't know what to do. I'm any which ways a very I'm a very restless soul. I can't sit in one place. So I love being outdoors from the very young time only. I used to cycle a lot. I have done a lot of skating. Fitness has always been a kind of meditation for me, which helps me tap into that hemisphere into my brain, where I can be in that meditative zone to be able to perform that consistently on the mountains as well. See, now when you talk about a sport like mountaineering, there is no top mark of how much do we have to perform. Right? Sometimes our movements last for 72 hours. Sometimes we are not able to sleep for 5 days. Sometimes we are not able to eat food for 3 nights. So you are being pushed to your limits. You cannot train for something like this. So there's a lot of mental fitness and there's a lot of physical fitness which we have to focus on when we talk about mountaineering. It's a very, very, very extensive sport. As I said, there are permanent consequences. If I do a mistake, I might not come back with my fingers. I might have to live the rest of my life without my toes. I might have to amputate my hand. So it's a high-risk sport, and training for it also is very, very, very intense. We are almost running, when I used to train during my more younger times, and now I have one too many grey hair, and there are a lot of more youngsters, but at my peak, I still remember I used to sleep for only 3 hours a day, and I used to be training for 17 hours a day. Rest of the 4 hours used to go in cooking of my food and the prep which I required to train for 17 hours. So I have pushed the body limits to that extent. We used to do almost 4 half marathons a week, 60 kilometers of cycling from Noida. I would go by the Greater Noida Expressway up to Pari Chowk and back. That would exactly be 60 kilometers to Sector 51 and back. So I would do that in less than 2 hours up and down. Then intense amount of calisthenics, quite a lot of high interval training in the gym, lot of high functional body weight training in the gym. Then again, a lot of meditation and yoga. I used to practice a lot of Kapal Bharti, Anulom Vilom, basic breathing exercise to help me when I was more younger. The more younger you are in the field of mountaineering, the more difficult it gets for you to survive up there. So you don't have an edge. Unlike any other sport where you have an edge the more younger you are, your lungs are not fully developed. So practicing that, and then also me coming from an asthmatic background. I was born with childhood asthma. My father still has asthma. My grandfather also developed asthma. So it's in our family, so I have to be very careful. I have to keep my lungs intact, and then being in mind of dealing with all of these mishaps which happen on the mountain. Sometimes it does affect you, even if you don't want to be stuck in a certain mindset in your zone or certain pictures. Unfortunately, memory is also a thing. Learning is also an ability which God has given us, which gets very difficult. You can't unlearn things, you can't forget things, right, which have happened with you. So it gets very difficult. So dealing with your own demons also from within, and then going and climbing it. You have to be passionate for it. You can train for mountaineering, but if you're not built for it, you're not built for it, right? It is not for everybody. I think it's for the little more evolved human beings who are able to push their limits, right? I am a little cuckoo up here also. As my sister says, I try and spend not a lot of hours above 8,000 meters because my sister says that I don't have a lot of brain cells as it is to start with, to lose a few up there, right? As the average human being would have. So
of course, but it takes a lot to, what you are right now, and we all, of course, admire you. Before we wrap this conversation up, you're set for this next expedition, and you will be the the youngest to scale 8th and the 9th.
Correct. We'll be the youngest Indian, obviously, and the first Indian ever to have climbed the 8th and the 9th 8,000 meter peaks. 8K, and this is Project 8K.
And I think 5 of the peaks fall in the POK zone.
After this, yes. So after this phase, this is my second phase, and hopefully we'll be successful. And in the month of April, we are leaving for Nepal. First, we'll attempt Shishapangma, and then we'll coming down to Dhaulagiri. And then after that, my eyes are on the phase 3 of our mission of Project 8K, because the next 5 peaks are actually in the POK region.
Yes.
No Indian has unfortunately ever climbed these 5 peaks. The rest of the world is allowed. So is the unfortunate misery of this thing. But I think I was the one who was designed to, I think, bring back these mountains also, which have unjustly taken away from India. Until 75, if you go to look at it, our father's textbooks, K2 was the highest mountain of India.
Yes.
Only after the annexation of Sikkim in 85 did we get Kangchenjunga, and Kangchenjunga, half of Kangchenjunga became part of India. But before that, K2 was always, which is the world's second highest mountain, was always the highest mountain of India. Unfortunately, it has been illegally been taken away by our country, and I'm very happy that the senior leadership of our country has taken such a matter into notice. Till now, it's from the 60s itself, it was an always ignored matter. Such an integral part of our country was lost. 8,000 meter peaks, such an integral part for the adventure tourism aspect was lost. There are ample of climbers, all nationalities, imagine, are allowed to climb in that region, but only Indians. And the funny thing is that Pakistani climbers can very nicely go and climb Kangchenjunga from the Nepalese side, but unfortunately no Indian can go and climb K2. So I'm very, very happy every time I see the senior leadership of our country, the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Home Minister, taking an account of this subject and bringing it to importance at a national level. I'm hoping that with their initiatives, the first Indian and Project 8K will be successful, because we will need their blessings, we will need their push and pull to be able to get back this part, the POK part back to our country, and get these 8,000 meter mountains and get us to the top, and make India in that elite list of 40 less than 40 climbers who ever climbed the Grand Slam of mountaineering.
And then finally, any message before you actually set out for your expedition, message to the countrymen, all the young and old, everybody, to say to your fellow Indians?
I would definitely like to say that I have always believed in dreaming big and daring to chase it. And I'm always been so grateful for all the support which I have gotten from my fellow countrymen, not just the common people of my country, but also the media houses, all the press friends. They've been so supportive. Without them, I don't think I would have been able to even go to my second 8,000 meter peak. Forget alone this young boy from Noida who was dreaming big, to be able to become a mountaineering prodigy, to be able to climb my 16th 8,000 meter mountain. I'm very grateful. But to all the youngsters out there, I would like to say that if you have a dream, if you have a passion, nurture it. Must have a passion. If you don't have a passion, find that mountain in your lives. I believe that every youngster out there has a mountain in their lives which they are trying to climb. The process of climbing the mountain is same. It's how early you identify it and how early you start working towards it, which is going to make you a winner. So find the Everest of your life and go climb that mountain.
Well, that's quite inspiring. Every time we talk, of course, as friends or even otherwise, I think it's always inspiring, and I hope that all our viewers have been inspired by Arjun's journey that he has shared and the experiences he has shared so far. Of course, there are many intricate details I think only he can understand. He might not even be able to, tell us everything in this short span of time. But thank you so much, Arjun, for joining us here, and all the very, very best. We pray to God that this time, once again, you're successful, and the tricolor keeps flying high to all the peaks that you are now aiming to. Thank you so much for joining us at Republic Podcast.
Thank you so much.